With nothing to lose, young Japanese Americans were anxious to prove their loyalty. My father volunteered for a suicide mission, fighting behind enemy lines in Burma. Under the command of General Frank Merrill, this elite ranger battalion of more than 3,000 men, known as Merrill's Marauders, went on this perilous mission to open the Burma Road, an integral gateway from China to the rest of Asia. Riddled with dense jungles, humidity, and diseases, the terrain was anything but safe and friendly. A special team of Nisei interpreters and their captain was formed to join this secret mission. 7 were from Hawaii, and 7, including my father, were from the West Coast. During 4.5 arduous months, the Nisei interpreters gained valuable enemy intelligence and engaged in combat. General Merrill said that without the efforts of the Nisei, the operation in Burma would not have been successful. He also said that the Nisei were in the enviable position of possibly being mistaken for the enemy and shot by the Chinese, the Japanese, and their own troops. My father, Akiji Yoshimura, was born on December 5, 1917 in California to immigrant parents who came from Hiroshima, Japan. He was raised with 4 other siblings in Colusa, a Sacramento Valley rice farming community where many Japanese immigrants had come to farm. His family lived out in the country, and when he finally went to school in town, he learned his first lesson in American life. His kindergarten teacher, incensed that he could not speak English well, had locked him into the schoolroom closet. "You will not leave this closet until you can clearly say to me, 'Good morning, dear teacher,'" she said. Every day for weeks, my father stood in the closet, practicing until he could recite the phrase perfectly. This was the first of many life challenges and opportunities for him. Shortly after high school, my father joined the U.S. Army. Then in 1939, World War II started, and life changed dramatically for Japanese Americans. Army officials began to question the allegiance of servicemen of Japanese ancestry. During one interrogation, they demanded that my father prove his loyalty by spitting and stomping on the Japanese flag and a photograph of Emperor Hirohito. Like most Japanese Americans, my father had been raised to honor and appreciate other peoples and cultures, and he refused to obey these disrespectful commands. In response, his superiors kicked him out of the Army, and soon thereafter, my father returned to Colusa. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942, which mandated the incarceration of more than 110,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, into concentration camps, euphemistically called relocation centers. Unjustly uprooted from their homes and their farms and businesses, whole families were detained and lives were changed forever. My parents had grown up together in Colusa, and now they and their families were evacuated to the Amachi Relocation Center in Colorado. Other Japanese Americans were sent to similar camps in the U.S. interior. They were allowed to take only 2 suitcases of belongings. Stripped of their rights as U.S. citizens, they endured life imprisoned like criminals and guarded by armed guards. A year later, the U.S. military, desperately in need of troops, returned to the relocation centers to recruit Japanese Americans. The Nisei, or second generation as they are known, volunteered to serve in the highly decorated all-Japanese American 442nd and 100th Battalions in Europe, and many others served as Nisei linguists in Asia and the South Pacific. Because of his innate leadership abilities and Japanese language skills, my father was recruited into MIS, Military Intelligence Service, as an interpreter. When the Marauders secured the Burma Road and their mission drew to a close, most of the men had to be airlifted out of Burma, victims of the jungle and malnutrition. Only 200 men out of the original 3,000 or so were able to walk out on their own. My father was one of them. My father went on to interpret at the preliminary proceedings for the surrender of Japan in China. At the end of the war, he returned stateside aboard a ship. As they neared the California coast, the soldiers stood on the deck eagerly watching as they approached San Francisco Bay. My father was admiring the view when a nearby American GI mistook him for a Japanese POW. "I wonder how things are looking in your country now," the GI smirked. My father gazed upon the Golden Gate Bridge, grinned broadly, and responded, "Things are looking pretty good from where I'm standing."